This is a quick video demonstration of how the core tools in Turnitin Feedback Studio can allow you to mark submissions through Moodle online. So to access Turnitin Feedback Studio, if you click on your submission link in the same way as you would do normally, go to view all submissions, and then you'll see the normal grading table that we're used to. You'll have a tab for the originality score from Turnitin. This is really high because it's a demonstration essay that's been used over and over again. But the tool that you need to access Feedback Studio is this little blue pencil. When you hover over it, it says grade mark. That's just the old name for it and it just hasn't been updated yet. But once you click onto the blue pencil for the particular submission that you want to mark, you'll see a new tab opens up with a sort of PDF almost version of the work the student submitted. And you'll see in the tab here, this is why we call it Feedback Studio. So just to sort of navigate around the Feedback Studio layout, on the right hand side, these vertical toolbars, anything in this red toolbar here is relating to the Turnitin originality score. So if you remember, we had a sort of 100% score on Turnitin when we saw it on the grading table, and this is all in relation to there. The marking tools within Feedback Studio are in this blue toolbar, and then comprised of 3 different sections. Now for the core marking tools, we're just going to look at these first 2 here, which if you click onto them is quick marks, and the other one is feedback summary. So if we look at quick marks first, basically what quick marks are a set of either predefined comments. So if I've just clicked on academic integrity, for example, Turnitin provide a whole host of standard comments that you can use. You can drag them across or you can link to them. If you click on any of them, you'll see at the bottom of your panel here, it will show you what that particular quick mark is going to say. You can't edit the content of here, you can add your own comments to it, but if you use any of the predefined quick marks that are included within the system, then you can't change the actual content, you can just add to it. What you can do, as you saw here, is you can create your own set of quick marks, which means you can either bring in ones that exist in any of these other categories, so you don't have to keep going from category to category. You can take any that are appropriate, drop them into yours, and you can also then create your own quick marks if you want to. So this is one that I just did quickly earlier on, but I'll show you a little bit more about those in a second. So quick marks exist to hopefully allow you to sort of reuse existing comments and make things a little bit easier. As I mentioned, if you wanted to use the quick marks as they are, you can simply just drag them over and sit them next to the comment that you want to do. What we find is easier is if you highlight any part of the essay, you have this option, this little pop-up toolbar. Now, what's used quite commonly is the speech bubble, which is comment, because this allows you to put your own comments in like this, and you can make a hyperlink if you want to do some basic formatting. And when you click away, you can then just move this speech bubble and the line will show the student where that comment is in relation to. So this, again, if I just highlight another section, this is the speech bubble for just adding your own comments. If you want to add a quick mark, so one of these ones we've seen here, you use the little tick option, and that will show you all the categories that you can see on the right hand side in a sort of pop out. So if I wanted to use something out of the academic integrity category, and say I wanted to use this one. Now the difference here than just dragging it over from the right that I did in the first place was this will now have a guiding line to where that's in relation to, whereas when I dragged it across from here, it basically just sits it above. So this gives you a little bit more, it provides more guidance as to which part of the essay or report the comment is in relation to. And finally, on the sort of quick marks, if I highlight something again, the speech bubble, if you were to put your own comment in here, just quickly, What you can do is, if you're going to use this comment over and over again, you can convert it to a quick mark. So if you find that you're typing the same one in as your sort of individualised comments, if you hit convert to quick mark, you can give it a title, because it needs to know what it's in relation to, and where you want to add it. So in this case I would add that to my quick marks, and then it would appear over here to use once I've saved it. So if I save it, you can now see my clarification quick mark has been created based on one I've done myself originally. Now obviously you don't need to do that. Lots of people simply just use the annotation feature a bit like you would in Word, where you use the comment and you put your own feedback in here and then move away. You don't have to save anything, it auto saves as you go through. So the only one I didn't show when I highlighted, you've got a strike through option should you want to. If you don't highlight a piece of text and say you just click up here, you still get the quick marks and the speech bubble as you would do normally, but you get this additional one as a sort of floating text bar. So basically this will allow you the equivalent of sort of writing in the margins, if you like. Once you've made these comments, you can hover over them, change them, or you can move them and sort of put them, as I mentioned, in the as a equivalent of writing in the margin. So those are the core sort of annotation comments that you can do. As you can see, if you hover over any of them, you can delete them. The little delete option comes up, or you can edit them if you click onto them. So that's the core annotation comments. The other sort of feedback summary or overall comments is in this second icon here, and you'll see this is simply, as it says, a simple text box to put your overall comments in, and this will keep growing. You can put as much text in there as you like, and so again you don't have to save it, and that would be where your overall comments would sit for the entire piece of work. What you do have that's useful if you wanted to is you've got the option to use voice feedback. So if you wanted to give your overall comments as an audio file, you can just hit record and record up to 3 minutes long and then just save, and then the student can just click on it and listen to that feedback once once it's released to them. So a useful feature if you want, and a really easy way to do audio feedback. If you're just going to use those two core tools, which many people do, your sort of final step would be to put your grade in up here. So I'm going to say that this one got 65. Important, when you put a grade into the Feedback Studio, you see there's a sort of highlighted line still around the box. You need to click anywhere away from there just to store the grade. Now basically the one bit of Feedback Studio we haven't looked at is this final icon that's about rubrics and grading forms, which the next part of the video will cover. But as far as just annotations and overall comments, as I say, you've got these first two blue icons and the option to put your grade in the box at the top. Once you're finished, if that was the tools you're using, you close the tab and that will take you back to the Moodle grading form, and then if you refresh, you'll see that the grade that you gave in Turnitin has been brought across into Moodle. Now that's really important, because obviously when you're linking your Moodle assignments to Unity, then the grade has to be in this box here for it to be able to send it. But providing you've put it in the Turnitin grading box, you only still ever have to put it in once and it will automatically come across here. I refreshed it just to make it come across a little bit quicker, but it will come across. So that covers the core parts of the annotations in Turnitin Feedback Studio. The next part of the video will look at the rubrics and the grading forms. So in this part of the video we're going to look at the rubric tool within Turnitin's Feedback Studio. You access it in the same way as we saw previously for the core tools, so we'll click on submission. I'm going to use a different submission for this just to demonstrate the rubric itself, but view all submissions as before. Use the blue pencil to access, Obviously, if you were using a rubric and the annotation tools you saw previously, all your annotations would be here already. But we're going to focus on this icon that we haven't looked at yet for the rubric or the form. And what you'll see when it opens up is the name of the rubric and however many criteria you've got. The sliding scale, short sort of preview of it isn't the best to be able to do your full marking on, so we normally say use this expander so that you can get a full size rubric. Now obviously if you've got two screens, you can have this on a different screen, or you can snap so that you've got the rubric on one side and the essay here. But I want to focus on the rubric at the moment. So what this is known as is a qualitative rubric, and these are the ones that we see used all of the time at the moment across the institution. And the qualitative rubric means there's no score attached to any of the sort of cells that you click for any of the criteria. Now the reason for that is you can set up a rubric where you can give a certain amount of marks for any of these particular scale areas, but the way it works is it has to be a definitive value. So whereas a lot of people, and in this example will look at the degree classifications as the sort of scales that are used, the next example you'll see is similar, except it'll have excellent, very good, good as the scales across the top. But what Turnitin or Moodle rubrics can't do is allow a range. So you can't, like, whereas we can put it in the descriptor here so that the student knows which grade boundary they're in, if we click this box we can't then say, oh, we want to give it 75. It has to have a definitive number, so that is often quite difficult in higher education to have those very fixed scores for each of the grade boundaries. So what most people use is the qualitative rubric, which doesn't have scores built into it, and you'll have your criteria down the left hand side, and you kind of have them as much detail as you need. There's 6 criteria in this demo one. You have your scales across the top, and here again, like I say, it's the degree classification. And when you come to mark, you look at your criteria and then you click on the box as to where the student sits within those boundaries. And what you can then do, as we've done previously in more manual marking, is as the academic you then decide where within these two ranges the overall score will sit, and that's what you would then put in your score up here. But as far as the rubric goes, it's a visual indicator for the students that where they sit within the boundaries. Now obviously if you wanted to give scores within the criteria, you can't do it within the rubric. As I say, the rubric is simply a visual representation of the descriptors and the scale, so we'll close that because it's done its job. If you wanted to give more detailed feedback per criteria, then we often have people who will say, right, criterion 1, and they would give a score. So if they said that you know, whether they're using a score out of 25 or they're giving it a percentage, they would put whatever indicator there. Criteria 1, criterion 2 is 15 out of 25, and so on. And so you have to use the feedback summary part if you want to give more detailed feedback on the qualitative rubric. So if your rubric doesn't fit into being able to have a very fixed score for each criteria, and you want it to be more flexible, as the example I've just shown, then you can use the feedback summary for criteria based marking and your overall comments. Now more recently we've seen people move more away from the criteria based marking to an overall score and the visual basis of the rubrics. Obviously today in the video I'm just showing you the ones that are used the most at the moment in the university, and that's the qualitative ones I've shown you. The qualitative one, sorry, I just showed you, and the one I'll show you in a second is showing the same thing but with a slightly different scale at the top, but the principle is the same. So I'll go and show that now so that you can see. So if we close the tab down, sometimes if you come out quite quickly, it will leave this message. You can cancel it, just make sure you've clicked out of your boxes and close it again, and then you'll see you're back here. What I want to do is go to another assignment just to show you the slightly different scale that's used, but it's still a qualitative rubric that doesn't have the definitive scores built into the rubric. That's done afterwards. And if I open the rubric up, similar to what you saw in the previous example, but you'll just see here the descriptors at the top aren't the degree classifications, they are just excellent, very good. And so again, you click on the scale where the student sits within the criteria and close it. And again, for any additional comments around the criteria, you would use the overall feedback summary. So that's just to show you a different way of using the rubric tool, or the qualitative rubric tool. So this final part of the video is looking at a Turnitin grading form, which is also part of the Turnitin Feedback Studio as the rubrics were. View all submissions, use your blue pencil to access. Again, if you've used the annotations, etc., those will all still be here. If you've created a grading form rather than a rubric, it still appears under the rubric/form section. The main difference with the grading form is it's more like a word-based sort of feedback form that you may see. And again, you get the preview in the side panel. If you expand it, you can see in this example the way the feedback form works is you obviously have your criteria in the same way as we've had them previously. You can choose whether to have a score or not. In this example, the score is enabled. You don't have to have a score, it can just simply be comments and criteria. And so you would, if you were giving a comment per criteria, pop it in there and then put your comments. So you would just go through, and you'll see here in the bottom part is as you enter scores into this one, this will automatically put the scores across. So I'm just going to do some scores in here to illustrate the point. And at this point, and I won't put comments in each, but you can see that the overall score now is appearing as 64. Once you've finished, you can apply that grade and close it. I've just done it a bit quickly, so that's why it's clicking on there. So if I close now, and what you'll see in the difference in this one to the rubric is the 64 that you've put in the grading form. If I just reopen it up again, yeah, that 64 has translated over here, and you can just see the side preview here of your scores. But as I say, you don't have to have the scoring box if you want this simple sort of comments per criteria. You can disable that, and then it will just be the comment boxes you see, and you would put your score in manually at the top here. Something to note is you can only have a grading form or a rubric. Some people have asked, and quite sensibly, if you could have this and a rubric, so that you could use this for the criteria based comments and the rubric for the sort of visual representation of the criteria and the scales. Unfortunately, you have to have one or the other. So as I've shown you in different assignments, in the previous assignment I had a rubric, and in this one I'm using a grading form. And again, if you're the idea of this video is just to raise awareness on what the potential is. We've got lots of help materials, and we can help you one-to-one if there are any of the processes you've seen that you're interested in. And again, I'm just going to click out and take us back to this assignment, and in the same way as the other one, the grade will come across. So that's the end of this video around Turnitin Feedback Studio. As we say, the contact details are on the following slide. Please get in touch if you want to know any more about anything that you've seen within this video.